Okay. First of all, thank you for coming. As I said, my name is John Schwab. I'm from Curtain Call. Curtain Call is a platform that allows theater professionals to connect both on stage, backstage, creatives, and Shure microphones. Well, I'm pretty sure you all know who Shure are. But I'm going to let the panelists give a little bit of background. What we have is we've constructed a panel that will take you from the design through to the performance side of sound. So I think you'll get a full spectrum of what it takes to put something on stage. So Siobhan, if I just kick off with you, then you guys go down and say who you are, what you do.
Absolutely. Do I need to talk?
I don't know. Can you hear?
Can you hear me without this microphone?
They're all
brilliant.
saying yes.
Siobhan Harrison. I have been working as an actor for about 16 years now, from big scale musicals of about 2,000 seats to kind of much smaller musicals at places like Southwark Playhouse, which seats about 80 plays, again on various scales, some mic'd and some unmic'd. So experienced all sorts of kind of soundscapes like that. But yeah, about 15 years.
Hi, my name is Richard Brooker. I'm a sound designer, predominantly in musical theatre, mainly large-scale things as well, a couple of 1,000-seat type venues. I've worked on different types of musicals. I seem to have been lumped into a bit of a genre of doing more pop-style musicals of late, but obviously I love an orchestra as much as the next person. I've been doing sound for about 30 years and designing for about 17, I think. That's me, I think.
Hello, so my name's Zoe Milton. I'm a freelance sound engineer working predominantly in theatre and broadcast. I'm also the administrator for the Association of Sound Designers, which is a theatrical association looking after theatre professionals in sound and future professionals who are coming into the sound department.
Hello, my name's Scott Arnold. I am the Managing Director of Autograph Sound Recording. I've been at Autograph for 22 years. I started there selling batteries. I now run the day-to-day ins and outs of Autograph, putting deals together, looking after staff. And as a hire company, a person who runs an hire company, other professional microphones and radio mics are available.
Hello, I'm Janie Robinson. I'm the Deputy Head of Sound on Wicked in London. I've been a sound operator for 12 years now. Previously I was a stage manager, and I've been working on Wicked and Les Miserables, both in London.
Good morning, my name's Stuart Moots. I'm the Associate Director of the Pro team at Shure UK. So we get to look after a lot of these people, theatre, broadcast, film, all the fun stuff.
Brilliant, thank you. And just when you're answering questions, just jump in, everybody. This is a panel, it's a chat. The way Curtain Call works, we like to have discussions. It's not an interview. So I would like to start with you, Zoe. And it seems like there's been a huge shift recently with development of new technologies. Getting smaller, lighter, whatever. Can you give a quick snapshot of how the audio and sound industries have evolved in, let's say, the last decade or so? Because it really has shifted. I mean, coming to this event for the last few years, you can, even in the last 5 years, you can see how it's come along. Can you just take us through how you see that it's shifted towards new technologies?
I think the major thing, especially somewhere like Plaza, that you notice is that it used to be very much that the equipment existed for the industry. So you would have, speakers that were being designed for rock and roll, and theatre would take them and use them in a slightly different way. And so I think what I've noticed over the last 5 years especially is that a lot more manufacturers are interested in what we're doing in theatre, which tends to be quite different to what anyone else is doing. So, a theatre sound person would quite happily, I've been at the National when someone's taking a speaker out of its box, or, using it in a different way, or attaching it to a doll because it's got to be a baby that's crying. And actually all of those things we were taking apart and messing with. And actually now I think manufacturers are much more interested in what we're doing and are providing solutions for us. So there seems to be a lot more technology that's like, that's actually been thought about and we can use that in our industry easily. So yeah, I think that and the way that people work is a lot more understood now as well. So there's a lot more interest in looking after our freelancers and our workers especially.
And Richie, you just talked about being asked to do a little bit more pop rock kind of stuff. I mean, that's changed from having a massive orchestra on something like Les Mis or something at the E&O, which is now a thing, to having a band in 6, playing at the moment, or even a track. How has that kind of moved on?
Well, I think there's various forces that make that happen. There's budget, of course. It costs a lot to put 20 musicians in a pit. There's scenic design elements where it's becoming much more the norm to use a lot more of the space as a performance space, so it can encroach into the orchestra pit, for example. But also, I think the genre of musicals that we've been seeing over the last 15, 20 years is I'm actually not a fan of the name jukebox musical, but it's we all know what that means, and it's using an artist's music to put a show together. Generally, those artists are pop acts or rock acts, so they don't have a requirement for a full orchestra. The use of tracks along with things to pad out the orchestra is a matter for debate as well, particularly with the Musicians' Union. It works well for touring. It's very difficult to tour a musical with a large band because obviously the size of the orchestra pits varies so dramatically from a Victorian Matcham House to some of the big new theatres. So I think I can see all the reasons why. I still think it's lovely when you go and see a show and there's more than 10 musicians, let's say. So, yeah.
I mean, I'd like to throw this question out to everybody as well. There seems to be a massive, I think it was about a decade ago, there were 3 or 4 site-specific theater companies, which has now obviously ballooned, and site-specific has become a massive part of our industry, and everyone has to kind of adapt to that as well, and it's become a very, I suppose it opens up design issues and mixing issues and performing issues and everything else. How have you guys come across, or how have you kind of adapted to I know that site specific, what I'm trying to say is people come and say, we want to do something different, and everyone wants to do something different. When a director says, I want to do something different, and you're going to have to mix in a large hall, Janie, I mean, how much have you guys come across that recently, and how much does technology both add or kind of is a hurdle for those kind of productions?
Well, from our point of view, the boundaries are constantly being pushed in everything. Every show has to have something different, has to be something different, or it doesn't. It's a blunt thing. It doesn't last. It doesn't work. So, yes, when a sound designer goes into a show, when Richard goes into a show, he has to think a little bit more outside the box to what's to make that difference. You've got to deal with the basics, but you also have to you have to add something a little bit different. And the spaces in London, there are not enough theatres in London now. It's the London theatres in London, we're full up. We have you can see now that there's companies like Troubadours who are basically building theatres to accommodate the amount of shows that are coming in. And that puts up a whole different world of challenges. You have a theatre like the Noel Coward, which is a typical, certainly when I started at Autograph, was a typical playhouse, now has a musical in it. And then trying to fit a full-scale musical into something that's a 900-seater playhouse, that's another challenge. So it is constantly being pushed, and everything has to be different. It has to be different, or it doesn't work.
And from Shure side of things, that with that, when people come to you, is that a challenge for you guys, and you come up with new innovations, or?
Of course, we wouldn't be. It's thanks to these guys we are where we are today. We had to go with the advent of digital wireless and the Axiom digital system. We had to listen. We had to go out and speak to people's colleagues here to get where we needed to be today. And the offset of that, the trade-off is it takes a lot of time to develop that. And we also have to look into other things as well, such as Scott was saying, it's very congested in London. And in terms of putting huge channel counts into that space, we really need to know what's happening spectrum-wise, not only locally, but globally as well, and then tie that into a product which gives something for everybody.
I'd like to just dig a little deeper before we open this up as well to performing and mixing. Can you guys take me through maybe a specific challenge of a design? I know we have a lot of people in here that would kind of love to hear stories and specifics about how you kind of overcome a certain, a hurdle to get through. If it's costumes, or or putting not costumes, but putting things in a set to make sure someone was heard. And no one wants to see a mic. That's the thing, do they? They love the microphones, but no one wants to see it. So could you just take me through some specific examples of what you guys had to do on certain shows?
Well, I'll take you through a little bit from my perspective, and then maybe knocking it that way a bit. It's when I ask for something and somebody else has to solve the problem. I think that there's been a lot of pressure on. The pressure starts way back from, as Stuart was saying. Suddenly we're getting all of our frequencies reduced, the amount we can have. So therefore, everyone's got to be extremely clever about how they come up with the technology to fix that, which they have. And so we now can have the same amount of radio mics as we always did, possibly more, who knows. But so that was a thing for us, because for me, I like to, and I'm not on my own in this, most sound designers do, on the principal characters in the show, they'll wear 2 microphones normally, because as I'm sure you know, occasionally sweat can just temporarily dull down a microphone. So we like to be able to switch over to the B pack so we don't lose any quality and clarity in the sound. So I'm sure you've had to wear two mic packs. Now, obviously they used to be larger, and we used to get a lot of hassle from the wardrobe, the costume designer, set designer, and also from the occasional temperamental performer.
Siobhan doesn't know what you're talking about.
Who might have said, I'm not wearing 2 of those, that's ridiculous. It makes my backside look enormous. And so, so there's been a lot of pressures for that kind of thing. And so the manufacturers have helped by reducing the size of the transmitters, and in Shure's case, changing the shape of the transmitter as well. So it's much more sort of ergonomically beautiful and easier to fit into sort of the small of the back, etc. So that's been helped for us. I mean, that's a challenge for us. You'll get an actor sounding absolutely beautiful with a nice mic position where you can't really see the mic. And then they go off stage, and the next time they come back on, they're wearing an enormous meter-wide sombrero. And that kind of, this kind of sound, and it's like the director's like, that's fantastic. They look fantastic. Why do they sound funny? And obviously, we need to address that. So whether we build a mic into the hat, or whether we do something clever, I can assure you it's never me that does anything clever. It's people like this who do the clever stuff. So over to you on that side, maybe.
Yeah, I think for me the main challenge has been, yes, I think always in theatre we've tried as much as possible to make sure that radio mics and any kind of vocal reinforcement is as discreet as possible, depending on the show, obviously. But I think for me, the biggest change in the last few years has been the advent of the kind of mixed media shows, where you will have people on stage, but then you'll have more people on stage filming them. And so that's then in the auditorium. So you have these huge close-ups. So whereas we had, a few meters to play with, and you'd be like, okay, we can put an ear hanger on that person because actually, it's not, no one's nearer than 5 meters. So we can get away with a little head on the ear. Now you've got cameras on stage, and it's like, you can't get away with that. So it's finding the equipment that can be hidden easily, but also is reliable enough that you don't need to get to it all the time, and also, like Richard was saying, is robust enough to deal with the issues of putting a mic on a human. So there's all those kind of sweat issues, and sometimes there are situations where you can't get a mic on the human, and you need to look at how that mic, how you can put it on a piece of set. So we had, for obvious reasons, there was a scene where it took place in a 4-poster bed, and there was no way of putting the mic on the gentleman at that time. And so we had a mic on the 4-poster bed, and we had to look at whether we could change the EQ for the mic on the lady who's also in the bed, to see whether we could use her mic for him. And so it's all those kind of things that actually, and that all takes a little bit of time. And so it's kind of building those problems in, that you have communication so that you can deal with the problem early enough. And actually, when you get to tech, that you might need an extra half an hour just to rerun that scene, or have a play, or have a bit of time for the number one and the designer to EQ any changes.
Let's speaking of Tech Week, Siobhan, listening to that, it's fascinating as a performer myself. Those are things I've never even thought of, like that an EQ might just be slightly, we kind of go, where's our light, where's our, yeah. But Siobhan, how crucial is it that sound, you want to be heard, you want your performance to be heard, but you also don't want to feel like you are being recorded. Could you take us through how you've seen it evolve and kind of issues that you come across in your everyday?
Size-wise, certainly. When I started, they were kind of bigger than cassette, kind of big, heavy things. So there was no way of hiding it, and there are some shows where that is an issue, and now they're much more. And the best the best situation that I've had is when you've got two in your wig. I know that's not always great for you guys or wigs. Particularly if something goes wrong that's hard to get off, but they're so easily hidden that way and you barely notice it. Sometimes if it's kind of running down your back and you're changing, it gets caught, and the last thing you want to be doing mid-show is changing a mic pack out. Sound-wise, within a show, have I noticed a difference?
Yeah, I mean, is it, you've done a wide range of musicals, so from Here to Eternity, you do, like you say, you do the plays. For you, you just did Home, Darling, and that was really well mic'd, discreetly. That was incredible.
Really, yes, that was incredible because they were floating mics on stage.
Right.
But from hearing the audience, it was so clear. And then we were dealing with music for dancers coming on stage. And being able to hear it because it was a touring production towards the end, so it was different in every venue, and then switching back to the floating mics on stage for the play in different rooms and different. The sound for that was amazing.
Yeah, it was seamless.
Yeah,
like it was
you
amazing.
didn't notice it.
Bringing on, well, it was because it was mixed well as well. I mean, Janie, could you take me through your experience in 12 years? You've gone, was it stage management? You just got tired of working with actors and you thought, I'd just cut them off when I can, or...
No, because we still work so closely with them all the time.
Very closely.
I know, well, exactly, sometimes extremely closely.
Yeah.
But, so what was the...
So you mix on you've mixed from small shows to you're now mixing Wicked. What are the complexities of sound mixing for live performance? Because are there any expectations where live performance is becoming even bigger, like with more bands even going out there?
Yes.
When people go into the theater, they want to feel like they're seeing a live performance. They don't want to see necessarily theater when it comes to music.
Or would they do, people go to the theatre, they don't want to hear something that they could hear through their iPod or something. They want to make it, you want to have those dynamics there, nothing compressed. But what we do is such a balancing act of mixing for the audience, mixing to the designer's specifications, making sure that the performers are happy, all within there, and at the same time dealing with all the different things, the different performers that are on that day, the different band members that are on that day. People are tired, it's hot in the auditorium. We're having to balance all those things and make sure that the people who are paying for the tickets are getting the best show that we can put on. And that's why actually digital desks have been really helpful. I mean, we're still on analog, but on like a digital desk, you can preload EQs for different performers, for different depths coming in, and adjust things here and there just to make it easier. So because we're mixing line by line, because of using most of the time omnidirectional mics and we get too much phasing, it's nice to be able to know that that bit is sort of taken care of other than the odd bit here and there, so we can concentrate on making sure we don't miss lines, get the flow of the crescendos and everything, and make it the show that the designer wants and that we're very proud to put on.
Yeah.
Can I just pick
Absolutely.
up on what you're saying as well, is asking about what the audience expects to hear. I think that's an interesting point. That's changed quite a lot over maybe the last 15 years, say, and that, when I started, years ago, the intent was always to make it sound entirely unamplified. Just very, very light reinforcement, very, very focused, very, very imaged. And in the advent now of people having surround systems at home, even people's home computers, they quite often have a surround set up with, and the way that cinemas are now, when you go to it, it's huge sub-bass response, loads of surround effects. I think actually our public now expect something different to what they used to, rightly or wrongly. And so we're now in a place where we will try and give them the live experience, as you said. So still focus, still very much try and make it feel like everything that is happening from the actor is happening from the actor and from the live musicians. But they also want things spinning around behind them and huge sub bass and shaking their seats. Which is fine, you know. We live in a multimedia platform society, so that's fine. That theatre should come into that. But I think there's a misconception that if you turn it up, it's better. And certainly, in my experience, some producers, if the show is not getting the response they want, so this is a funny scene, but the audience aren't laughing, turn it up, make it louder. Well, in my experience, it's just still not funny, but much louder. So, you know, so I think that's something that we're battling with a little bit as well sometimes, is that there's a misconception that if it's louder, it's better. And certainly, I don't know what you guys feel, but when I go to the cinema, sometimes I just think this is ridiculous. It's so loud. You know, not that I'm against loud music, but you know, that's just an assault on my senses, and I don't want that when I go to the theatre. I want dynamic. As you were saying, that's what makes it an enjoyable live performance. Is you know, you draw the audience in. When it's a small dialogue scene, you want to be pulled in. You want to care about the performance and the story and the characters. You don't want to be sat back with it all washing over you. And I think in a society where we all have remote controls, it's like, I can't be bothered to listen to that. I'll turn it up. You know, we need to encourage people to get involved in the performance more, and the way to do that is to keep it dynamic, keep it live, make it feel like an experience. Sorry, that was me standing in my soapbox.
Great.
Well, and I'll back that up, because last night, it's weird that you say that. Last night I took my wife to see Downton Abbey, not my choice. And the first thing I said to her as I left is, it was too loud.
Yeah.
You know, Downton Abbey at the cinema, and I came out of there thinking, why was that so loud? It was just like, it's Downton Abbey. I mean, what we, you know.
They may have thought an older.
Yeah, so people do expect.
Maybe, possibly.
I was the youngest one
I'm
there.
not being ageist. So, Shure, you know, launched a campaign. This is the moment campaign, and which celebrates, you know, the communication between all points of the process of putting on a production. I'd like to talk about communication, because it always seems to be a thing in any production I've been involved with. There's often times opportunities are missed to kind of clarify a situation, especially from the design point to the execution of kind of everyone has their own idea about how something should be built, made, worked, used, or whatever, or supplied, you know, or how crucial, everyone jump in and please say it, you know, at what point should the conversation start from, this is the idea of a show, these are the designers we need to talk to, you know, the mixers we need to talk to, what equipment we bring in, you know, the performers, you know, Siobhan, at what point should they be talked to about how it's going to affect their performance? Because it does, having wires on you, it does affect. I'd just like to open it up and ask you about that moment, because we're all in it. It takes hundreds of people to put on a single show, and how crucial is the communication, and when should it start? And
Well, for us, you know, we are at the peril of the designer. Many years ago, autograph has changed very slightly from, and Richard may agree, maybe 15, 20 years ago, we may have had been involved in that process with outside designers, and autograph we still do have internal designers, but the process have changed where there is a lot more external designers who come in, and we've become a company that will do what we're asked to do and try to not offer too much opinion. Richard will probably tell us that we have some people at Autograph who will offer their opinion. But that is a change in model where we are, you know, the design is brought to us, and every production sound engineer who comes in the building will have a different idea how to put that together, which that becomes very frustrating, because you can't have a standard, because there are 10 very successful production sound engineers who all want to do it different for different reasons. So our input into the process is becoming less, because it's more done outside. You know, Richard will present us with a design, and then once we've gone through the process with the producer working it out, then it's pretty much where Richard will have his own production sound engineer, he'll have his own operators, he'll have his own crew to come in and build the show. So less for us. It's a changing model for us. Would that be fair?
Yeah, very fair. Yeah. I think from my point of view, from a design point of view, my communication starts with a meeting normally with the director and the musical supervisor. Sometimes a choreographer comes along as well, and there's normally a producer or one of the producers around, and that really for me is for me to just get an idea of what kind of show they're hoping to create, so to get some idea about whether they want it to be a natural sounding show or whether they want it to be very amplified. How many are there in the cast? How many are there in the band? Basic information that I need to know, and then I will go and see a theatre that the show's going into and have a look at how I'm going to cover the room, how I'm going to make sure everybody hears, where we can put the mixer, all of the practical things. And then I then create a sort of a basic spec of how equipment I'm going to use to make that happen, and come up with a team of operators who are going to do that show for us. And then we wait until the rehearsals start. Then when we rehearsals, we come along to some rehearsals and we can meet the company and meet musicians. And then I think this is where the fault is in the process. Right. It all stops until we get in the theatre. Yeah. And we'll be fitting up the show in the theatre for maybe 2 weeks or something before the cast arrive. And then the cast arrive and you're straight into tech. Yeah. And then there's a time pressure. Tech, quick, we've got a preview on Friday. So really, although we fix a lot of problems, we don't really address them all properly because there isn't time. And then sometimes, I'm sure you'll agree, too much has happened really for you to go back and fix that problem. So it's has a bit of a band-aid across it, but it never really gets solved. And I think it would be really nice to spend a bit more time with the company, at the sound department and the company together, and it's never scheduled in, and the time with the band is always quite reduced. And it's across the board. This is not peculiar to one or two shows. This is always the case. And I like to think that as a sound designer, I deliver for the performer as well as for the audience. But there's a limit to how much you can do with that based on various constraints. But do you think it would be nice to spend a bit more time discussing the show, really?
The designer is often there from the beginning, and the set designer, the costume designer work quite closely with the cast. And you meet everyone on the meet and greet day, and then that's it. It would be lovely to have a time, particularly on a musical, with the sound designer and the musical director to kind of discuss the general sound of the show, what we're aiming for. It also kind of prevents any annoying, can I have more of this, can I have more of this? Because if it's just not in the palette, then there's no point. Yeah. And if we had discussed that early on, then we would kind of know what we were working with. Quite often you get 2 months into a run of a musical and you go, well, I can't hear this, and I can't, because something's happened and you've kind of fixated on something. But if there was more of a kind of interworking between the sound design and the cast and the band, you would have a better general idea of what was going on. Or, the scope of how much movement there is within things, what you can expect to hear or what the audience are hearing, because that's something that we never know.
Of course,
what the audience hear, the mix that the audience get. So it would be lovely to have a kind of a bigger presence in rehearsals
earlier on.
Yeah, it would be amazing.
Yeah. And guys, when you're working with the cast, obviously I'll send a message back on the radio to someone backstage and just say, well, that just doesn't work, that sounds rubbish, can you fix it please? Very helpful. But you do fix it, so and that relationship is, as we said earlier, that's a stronger relationship really, because you actually see them backstage,
person to person.
And we have to obviously communicate with you what the problem is, because you just sound rubbish is not going to help you.
Likewise, me going, well, it sounds awful.
Exactly.
Who's on the desk? It's unhelpful. It's a pointless thing. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. The more specifics that you can say us about anything, I need more piano, or this is that. And I know with a lot of designs, you're not getting any vocal fallback on stage, so you're relying on what's going into the auditorium and coming back, and we try and help as much as we can, but if you know about that, rather than saying, I cannot hear myself in the speakers at the side of the stage, am I just not in the mix? Well, no, you're just not getting any. But a lot of people don't know that from the beginning, and therefore, just complain about it.
Panic starts, and then...
Yeah, exactly.
But I'd say, from that, in my experience, so much of actually when someone comes up to you and says, I can't hear, or it sounds rubbish, or I'm having a problem, it's getting underneath that and finding out why why is it that you're today having a problem, and all of those things that actually, when you end up working out what it is, that actually it's not that you need vocal foldback, it's that actually you can't hear that instrument line, or there's something where, and actually you can, so it is all those, actually if you've got a good relationship with your cast and your crew, then you can figure those things out, and you can find out what the actual problem is, because it might be that you push the vocal reinforcement on stage if you've got it, and actually that doesn't help at all. It just makes everyone cross.
And actually blocks out what they're trying to hear, what they need to hear to do their job, essentially.
Awesome. Guys, we have about a quarter of an hour. I'd love to open it up to the audience. If anyone has any questions, we've assembled a fantastic panel here. So throw it at them. There's one straight away in the front row. Yes?
You briefly mentioned about frequencies and the issues around that. Could you sort of expand on some of that? For a long time, we've used channel 38 very happily around the country. Then we started getting the Ofcom licenses in order to make sure that we weren't getting interference. Now, obviously, with the introduction of digital and big claims made on manufacturers' website, everyone from 9.6 to Shure, what can you tell us for those of us that are out there trying to put stuff, perhaps not always in London, although sometimes in London?
From a manufacturer's point of view, it is obviously it's very important that we know locally what's going on with spectrum, with regulations, and we have to do, and ensure we have to do that on a global scale. This could be a very long answer, so I'll try and keep it brief. We have days topics on this. In order to do that, we have a team that goes out there. We have a compliance committee who goes out and does that and look at that. I can't give you any safeguards. We try and make the best product that will last for a number of years, and that development doesn't stop. The advantage of going to a sort of software platform that we are now allows us to sort of grow those things and increase those channel counts. In terms of what's coming in the future, I couldn't tell you, but we just have to make sure that those things are available for everybody here to use. So there's constant communication going on between us and certainly in the UK with Ofcom, so we can find out what's happening. But that's what led to Accent Digital. We made it a wideband platform receiver, so it covers the whole of the UK and Europe spectrum, just to make life as easy as possible for everybody. Because ultimately, that's what you want. You want a system that you can plug in, play, and use anywhere. That sounds great.
Great. Any other questions? You're on the edge, right behind you, man.
Hi, I just wondered, from both sides, from performing and from set designing, also from the technicians, what's the next big game changer? What's the thing that will really help in sound in theatre, and is it close?
You stole my question.
That's to anyone, really.
Yeah.
As a supplier, I'm scared about what the next big thing is. People who know me know that people who do know me know I am an optimist. I'm also a realist. Theatre is slightly going off the question, but it does answer the question. I worry about what the next big thing is, because as we sit here now, everything is okay. Don't feel sorry for us. The future, and that's my job, to look into the future of theatre sound. Theatre sound is unsustainable at the moment, and it's only getting worse because things become more expensive. There are more options. People like to do different things. Ticket prices go up, but the return for supplying sound equipment does not. So I worry about what the next thing is for sound, because I doubt it will be digital, and it probably won't last very long, and it will be very, very expensive. So from our point of view, it's a worry, but I'm here to try and to work with people like Shure and work with designers and work with everyone to make it so, I always say that a problem's not a problem if you know you've got a problem. We know now that in 5, 6, 7 years' time, theatre sound is unsustainable. If we carry on like we are, we have to make changes, and we have to work with Shure and other companies to work out what the next best thing is, and does it work, but is it sustainable, if that sort of makes sense. And that's what the goals are now. It's great that we've got all this lovely, great equipment, and that people get the opportunity to do what they do and their quirky ideas. But the next thing is to work out to make it affordable, because certainly the way I look at it on my dog walks and the way I think about it on my dog walks at 7 o'clock in the morning, it isn't. But I'm not putting a downer on it because all news is down at the moment. But me and other sound companies and other manufacturers, we're working on the processes now to get to the point where we get it back on track.
Yeah, I think there's two types of advancement in technology. I think there's necessary technology. So, for example, digital radio mics had to happen. There was no option. We had to do that, and that therefore is a worthwhile technology to invest in, and we're all going to use it. And there's various benefits in terms of sound quality, the lack of compounder circuitry, all that kind of thing, which gives us great sound. But also, on the practical side, the frequencies can be fitted in, so that's good. Digital consoles has opened up a whole world of, almost like an Aladdin's cave of goodies that we can use, and also from a programming point of view, we can copy cues and all kinds of things. Anything you can do on your computer, you can do on your console. Although we're not allowed to check our emails on them, which is really annoying. But there is also gimmick technology, and that's a problem now. Don't hold me to this, but I like to think I've never really been a gimmicky sound designer. I don't just go for things because they've just come out, or oh, that looks nice, that's sexy, it's shiny. Oh, look, a red one. I'm going to spec that. So I don't really do that. And I think at the moment we're seeing, with the greatest of respect to all the manufacturers who are all producing great stuff, some of it may be a bit gimmicky, and I don't necessarily think that we should be going down that route, but that's not for me to say. That's only my opinion. But that's the kind of thing that will bring down a rental company, I think, is they'll have to invest in this enormous equipment, and somebody, like Scott said, they'll only want to use it for a year, and then something else will come out, and then what do you do with it? It's a huge investment for speaker systems. So I think it needs to be a bit careful that the industry doesn't end up driving itself down. And certainly, as Scott said, the amount of money that is paid weekly for rental on a theatre show has now got to the point where it's almost like everybody's doing it for a favour, which obviously isn't sustainable. So we do have to be very careful. So I think there is some technology which is absolutely necessary, and there is some that is fun, that if it's not too expensive we should definitely indulge in, and some, let's be very careful because it's just costing everyone a lot of money. So
Good answer. Anybody? Yes, just there.
Yeah, I work in small theatre, and something that seems to have crept in over the past 5 years is that you've got, say, 10, 15 performers on stage. Musicals we're talking about, 9/10 of the performers can be heard perfectly clearly. 1 or 2, you keep on getting feedback from the audience. We can't hear them. The mics are checked. There's a tendency to turn up the level on that mic. Never quite addresses the problem. Anybody got we have come up with a belief, but I'd be interested in what the panel's belief is on that before.
The problem being that you've got a couple of mics that don't necessarily work, and then
We're not really blaming the equipment on the stage.
yeah. So if you've got limited equipment, being how would you kind of advise to kind of be, I suppose, think outside the box, in that situation, or with limited resources, what would you be able to do?
Is it a performer level problem, or are they still giving the same amount, or?
Well, I'll do the GM then. We believe it's the problem fixed itself.
Okay, yeah, because whether.
Yeah, it is, but you're not allowed to say.
You should say. I think you should. I think the microphones are only there to amplify. It's not. There's no excuse for lazy acting. There's no excuse for poor diction. That's absolutely not the sounds department's job.
it is definitely true that if somebody is speaking in a sort of mumbly way with poor diction, then putting it on the microphone over a sound system will only make that worse. It won't make it better. The input has to be good. I think I would normally discuss that with a director, if not directly with the performer, to say this is really not really working, this scene. Any way we can work? Because sometimes it's the director's fault as well. It's because that person's doing their line with their head in a cardboard box whilst riding a bicycle or something, and that was a great show.
Sorry, I missed that one.
But so there's things that can be done. I suspect you're right. It's probably just needs addressing with the performer or the director.
Just having a conversation about it.
And most performers are quite happy to take direction, aren't they?
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's the very nature of the job, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have time for one more quick one. Yeah, right at the back. Just wait for the microphone to come back. That'd be great.
Without throwing anyone under the bus, could you name some gimmicky technologies?
Ooh. You see, without throwing anyone under the bus, can you name some gimmicky? So instead of saying Kleenex, you say tissue.
Yes.
Or Hoover, you'd say vacuum cleaner, that kind of
Well, I'd like to throw that open to the panel.
That's not throwing anyone under the bus at all.
I believe we only have another 2 minutes. So no, that is an unfair question, because what is one person's gimmick is one person's tool of to make their job. But Richard is right. I can't get into that, obviously. But there are lots of stuff. I mean, I could put it out there. There's some people who look at me now and go, "You're giving it away." We spent £75,000 on a product 2 years ago, which is a digital product that is now obsolete. It doesn't work. The company doesn't want to back it up anymore. The sounder doesn't want to use it anymore. Now, where was the thought process before that? We were made to buy it because it was important to the show. I have a massive amount of respect for the designer that chose it, because at that time he thought that was going to be the next best thing. Do we ever get our return on that? We would never in a million years get our return. Is that our fault for not walking away and saying we're not going to do this show? It's no one's fault, but it's something that definitely needs to be looked at. And the very word digital means it doesn't last as long. It's we all have mobile phones, we change them yearly, and that applies to the sound industry as well. Do the price of mobile phones go up? Absolutely. I could give you an example now, a very crude example, that Autograph Sound Recordings rental for School of Rock is the same as Starlight Express in 1984. And that gives you an idea where I could probably, having worked on Starlight Express many years ago, I could write down the spec for Starlight Express on a bit of paper right now. I could tell you practically every single item that was on it. School of Rock spec is 15 pages long. So that gives you, and it's a great sounding show, don't get me wrong, and I'm sure that all the stuff that is on it is necessary, but that is the model of what we're dealing with in theatre sound. And it's difficult, but I'm excited, having only been managing director of Autograph for a couple of years, to challenge it and to try and get away with Richard getting what he wants and making shows sound great. These guys working on these shows and doing a great job, but making it sustainable. And that's the challenge. And I look forward to that challenge because I think it's doable.
Fantastic. I'm gonna ask one final question before we wrap it up, and that is it's kind of the genie in the bottle one. If you guys could change anything, because we're talking about the future of sound, if there's anything that I'd like everyone to answer this. If there's anything you could change or you'd like to see differently, or if you had just a genie's wish that said that's how I'd like it to be today in the sound industry, for anyone kind of coming up, there are quite a few students in today, they're right at the beginning of their journey. If there's anything that if you said this is going to happen, it's going to make their career easier or better or more accessible or whatever, but is there something you'd like to see, if you could just snap your fingers, that would change and make it better for you? What would that be?
For me, working almost exclusively in theatre is very much a visual medium. People go to watch a show, okay? And unfortunately, this is not me being bitter or upset, it's just that sound does factor very low in the importance of theatre when it's being set up, which is absolutely crazy when you think you're going to see a musical, where it's about the music and the singing. People come along to hear that, and until that is accepted by producers, directors, etc., then it's another point where where we're in a little bit of a limbo situation. So we'll always be struggling to get the time we need. We'll always not have the time to discuss the things. So for me, I think the thing that would make the biggest difference to me and to all of us in our industry is if sound was taken as seriously, or not seriously, as importantly as lighting and video and set and costume. Because really, it's such a big part of the experience now when you go to see a show. It really is. And until it's given its rightful place and recognition, I think we'll always be struggling a little bit and getting away with it, which is a shame to get away with it when we could actually all be involved in the experience a bit more. So that was one thing I would change. But if there are students here, it is still a fantastic industry, and please get involved. It's great.
I would say maybe a better education to the actors on an earlier level. So coming into the industry, I had no idea really what happens sound-wise, and you find yourself in a West End show and you never think about humidity levels or the amount of people, or you just know that the sound is different. And if there was a way of explaining to actors how sound changes and what can be done and what can't be done, kind of an open discussion perhaps between the two departments would be
Maybe we should go
great.
into drama schools.
Maybe we should. Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing
Yeah.
to students. Yeah.
Anyone else care
Come on,
to?
we want to change.
He's
Oh,
over
no,
there.
I totally agree with Richard that it's that sense that it is a visual medium, and you don't. Like, I think in shows that I've done, like I've just done a site-specific bunker show in Brighton and got Blackout over there, and like big kind of radio mic shows. Like actually, the sound, it's not thought of in the same way, and you are always struggling for trying to get the time to put a radio mic on someone, or trying to get quiet time, or all of those things. And actually, I think that would be for me, that would be a big one as well, that we could just get it, that there was space for us.
Yeah.
A sound designer who's still working today, but I won't name him, came up with a great phrase for our industry, and what I would like to do is to change that. He said that our industry, and he's right, is 5% PA and 95% PR. And I would love to change that statistic, because it is true. It's sometimes not about the sound, it's about other reasons. And I would love to get the 5% sound right back up again. So that's what I would certainly change.
I would agree with that completely, because there are times when maybe you can't go out. I mean, I've got a family, so I tend to just go home after the show, but a lot of times you feel like you have to do that social thing if you want to get the next job, or you want to do the next thing. So I mean, that would be amazing to have it go on. I mean, I'm sure a lot of times it does go on your CV and things, but at the same time, people put a face to a name, then they're more, and if they know them, they're more likely to go and hire them.
Yeah. And from Shure's perspective, Stuart?
One good question. From a manufacturer's point of view, it is difficult, specifically on wireless. If we knew what was going on beforehand, that would be great to know. But I think the points raised about education, that's key for us at the moment, to make sure that people do know what's coming, what's happening, and we're trying to address that across the board. But another big factor in this is, obviously we're talking about wireless and microphones, sustainability.
Yeah.
We just got to make sure that we're making kit that's, as Scott said, it's cost effective.
Obviously cheaper is what you're trying to say.
I'm not trying to say that. Let's go with cost effective.
Yeah, okay. We'd agree.
But sustainable. As you said, the students that are coming through, it's going to affect their lives further down the line. So it's important for us to recognise that.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. I think we're just about out of time now. So I'd like you all to please thank Siobhan, Richard, Zoe, Scott, Janie, and Stuart. So I had to write it down so I don't forget everybody. Please thank them. They've been fantastic. And they will be around today. And so ask them questions. Go up and say hello. They're all nice people. Thank you very much, guys.